Hi everyone, this is part 3 of our Racism Professional Development. Today we're going to focus on creating equitable curricula. Hopefully everyone was able to read the pre-reading, which was a report called Hate at School. And what this focused on was how it seems like reports of hate and bias, and that means verbal, written, or physical forms, is kind of the new normal. It seems like every day in the news we are hearing a story about this. What this report found out through a questionnaire through K through 12 educators was that what we're seeing in the news is really a tiny portion of what's occurring in our public schools. They asked teachers about incidents in 2018, and they found 3,265 reports of hate and bias occurring within their schools. We've noticed an increase in hate crimes, and they found racism to be a huge motivator behind those types of crimes. So what we're focusing on today in our professional development, this is a good explanation of why we really need to focus on this. Okay, let's go ahead and pause and talk before we get started. So when it comes to race and racism, what type of approach are you taking with your classroom and with your students? And a few more things before we get started. It's important to note that our schools are more diverse than almost ever before, and our numbers are just going to continue to increase with our diversity. And we need to note that the verbal, written, and physical incidences that are occurring that are motivated by racism, unless we do something, that's going to continue to rise as well. So as we know from our professional development, the first and second PowerPoints, this is a system in need of transformation. Our school systems are in need, and we know that our society is in need too, but it's really going to start within our school systems. When we are thinking about equitable curricula, something that we are not going to focus on is that colorblind approach. And what that is that's when race is not discussed. If it is discussed, maybe it's very, very surface level, never getting to the bottom of why racism is existing and why it's flourishing. And it really allows it to continue when we're not talking about it, when we're not questioning it, when we're not acknowledging it. It doesn't allow for change and transformation to occur. So what we do want to focus on is anti-racist education. And this is from the book, Is Everyone Really Equal? And here are a few components of anti-racist education. So this is an acknowledgement of the history and politics of racism, and it goes beyond celebrating diversity and differences. Remember, diversity, just by celebrating it, you're not getting to the root of it, right? You're just celebrating it, and that is extremely surface level. That's when you're just, anti-racist education is focused on social, cultural, and institutional power. And we know that racism is embedded in society, and this type of education recognizes that. So anti-racist education seeks to interrupt, identify, name, and challenge the norms, the patterns, the traditions, the ideologies, the structures, and institutions that keep racism in place. So this is really confronting it. You're kind of getting to why it exists and how it continues to exist. So the next part is, where do we start? And I just want to share that I know that it can be overwhelming and isolating as you begin this journey, because you might be on this journey alone. I doubt that your school is giving you a curriculum, so it's really up to you to go out and find that information. So this is adapted from a list that I read in an article. It's in my resources if you want the exact link, but it's why we need anti-racist education. And you first start with yourself. It seems like this huge undertaking. You're thinking, I need to completely transform my classroom. What about my school, my county? Look at this curriculum that we have, once you start truly analyzing it. But really, first, you just need to start with yourself. And we are products of this system, unfortunately, and we are completely bombarded with our mainstream dominant culture. And we need to have a really deep understanding and a deep questioning occurring now. We really need to be aware of our own biases that we're presenting. After we're able to do that, then we need to look at the content that we are bringing into our classroom. And that means really rethinking the power in our classroom. Whose voices are we sharing? Where are these perspectives coming from? And that isn't all subject areas. I don't just mean in our history lessons, right? Everything that we are presenting is coming from a certain perspective, and we need to really look critically at that. And the last part is don't be scared. Don't be afraid to allow social justice issues into our classroom. We need to be able to talk about them. We need to be able to think critically. If we have the colorblind approach, as I mentioned earlier, as our main go-to, we can see where that gets us. It's getting us nowhere. So we really need to be, and it can be uncomfortable at first. This is not normal. It's not what we're used to, but this is the way to dismantle these systems of oppression. So you really just need to have a self-awareness. And once you start to read about this and you become aware, that changes your interactions, not only with your students, but really with yourself, with your family, with the people around you. And it can seem overwhelming, but this is where you start. And really every interaction, everything that you're questioning truly does make a difference and brings us that much closer. So I found this, and hopefully I can zoom in a little bit on this. But these are just some ideas that I found. Let me just try to make this a little bit bigger. It's going to pull away from my screen, but that's okay. So to build anti-racist repertoire, students need to be able to reflect on their relationships to power and privilege. Several approaches can help students investigate these sensitive topics as a community. So asking students to play the role of social scientists for a week, and of course this depends on the grade level that you're working with, but help students build empathy by engaging them in role playing. And you can use that with their characters from literature or history. Study literary and historical narratives with your students that are reflecting a variety of experiences of people of color. And then lead students in a reflection based on Peggy McIntosh's article, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. That is a very powerful activity. These are just some ideas just to give you some information on what this looks like. Let's go ahead and pause and talk. So as you begin to transform your classroom and as you're looking at your curriculum critically and making the necessary changes, do you think that you're going to experience any pushback as you begin to shift your curriculum? Okay, so lastly, I wanted to share some resources. Like I said earlier, there's not a guidebook where you have all of your information that you need to have anti-racist education or just a socially just education for your students. Unfortunately, that doesn't really exist, and a lot of the work is going to be up to you as an individual, working on yourself and then sharing that with your students, and you guys can be on this journey together. But I did want to share some tried and true resources that I have personally used just to give you some concrete examples. I know that it's all, for me anyway, when I started this is how I felt. It could be overwhelming. And I really just wanted to know what it looks like. Okay, what does this look like in a kindergarten classroom? Well, here are some resources that you can share. Also, something that I always ask myself now is this, it can be your activity, lesson, a book that you're using, is this reinforcing or is this dismantling stereotypes, oppression, dominant society, and racism? Okay, so you're gonna lose my face again because I have to put this on the screen. But these are, Here we go. Rethinking Schools. This is a website that I have used. I'm just going to very quickly go through all of these. They have featured books. These books are phenomenal. It's a magazine. So they have some really good articles that you could, I don't know, I would just leave them like in the faculty lounge too and let other people read them. But this is a wonderful, wonderful site. Let me go back and share the others. We have the Zen Project. The Zen Education Project. Apologize, this is taking a minute. Teaching People's History. This is incredible. My sister uses this for her homeschool, but you have teaching materials, you can enter your grade level, and this is just a way to ensure that all perspectives are represented within your curriculum. This is really good for social studies lessons, what I found. Yeah, you can choose your theme, your resource, and then our last, we have a few more diverse books. This is one of the easiest ways to get started, and just switching out your literature. This is kind of where my awareness first started. So we need diversebooks.org. And I think this one is an app, which is really cool. So yeah, so when you're doing your read aloud, don't do the read aloud that you've done for 30 years. You know, switch it up a bit. Yeah, this is wonderful. And I apologize, my internet is slow. And these are just something for the educator. This is from tolerance.org. Let's Talk, a teaching guide to tolerance. And then Teaching for Change is the very last one. So I always just like to share these resources because I feel like it really makes it concrete and, okay, I can do that, right? I can switch out my, here we go, social justice books and Teaching for Change project.
Mommy, why do you have this?
And then lastly,
Mommy,
I have my references. So thank you so much for listening. This really is just the beginning.